Funding for NotAVampyre is provided by viewers like you. Find perks and bonus content at patreon.com/NotAVampyre. Thank you. This video has been a long time coming, and I hate that being reminded that many of those in power in the US hate the idea of my sex being able to decide what happens to our bodies, while also championing people who use the same argument to not get vaccinated was the thing that finally gave me the drive to make this. While these silver spoon-fed, mostly male few decide if I'm allowed agency over my body, let's look at the many times Degrassi characters have considered abortion and what they decided for themselves. The first person to grapple with this choice wasn't Manny or even Erica. It was actually Spike. When she found out that she was pregnant with Emma, she considered getting an abortion because she didn't want to go through the process of being pregnant and then giving birth. She figured not being a mom would be best because, as she put it, she was still a kid herself and didn't feel ready at all to parent someone else. Adoption seemed like the way to go, but Spike still didn't want the pregnant part. She debated with Shane the possibility of aborting the pregnancy, Shane telling her that she can't kill a baby, and Spike responding that she's not even carrying a baby but instead a fetus, and asked why should said fetus have more rights than Spike herself. Shane didn't really have a good response to this, but Spike still didn't know what to do. In the episode following, we learned that Spike had decided she at least doesn't want an abortion, but doesn't know if she wants to go down the adoption or the parent route. Well, we of course know that she decided to keep Emma, but at the time, Spike didn't know. To Spike, abortion was an option, just not right for her, but still a choice she could make. And we even hear Spike making that distinction to Heather when it was Erica considering abortion. To Erica, she grew up being told that abortion was wrong, and according to Heather, Erica believed it. That is, until Erica got pregnant herself. Like Spike, she felt that she was too young to be a mom. Sure, she was in high school while Spike had Emma in junior high, but Erica didn't feel any more ready. Unlike Spike, she was certain early on that she didn't even want to give birth. Erica knew that abortion was what she wanted, but was conflicted over the question of, was it right? It was like she was trying to convince herself to follow the path expected of her, to be as her church, her parents, and as Heather wanted, to do like Spike and go through pregnancy, being outcasted by those around her, and possibly get kicked out of school. Then to care for her child while still trying to grow up herself. Even when she ignited the debate in class and heard all of the usual anti-abortion talking points, she still couldn't choose to see the pregnancy through. As she said herself, if she were to go through with birth, she would feel responsible for the baby that is born, so adoption wasn't an option. And Erica knew she wasn't ready for that responsibility. She wanted to be a mom when she was older and married and prepared to be a mother. High school was not that point for her. None of the talk about abortion being wrong could override what she knew was best for herself. Not even the condemnation from her sister or demands from the protesters could convince her that being a teen mom was the only right path. As she said to Heather, this decision is easy to make when you're not the one faced with it. The emotions and reality don't set in until you yourself are the pregnant one, and it's specifically your life that will be impacted. Even while being bombarded with those who disagree, even by her own sister, Erica knew what was right for her in that moment. And though Heather hated the choice that Erica was making, she wanted to support her twin as she exercised her autonomy over her body. In the American broadcast of this two-parter, the final scene of Heather and Erica being swarmed by a group of anti-abortion protesters was removed. From what I've read, PBS claims they made the cut so that the ending of the episode would be more impactful, and not because of any agenda. Even if that's the case, I find myself siding with Kit Hood, who was so angered by the change that he wanted his name removed from the episode's credits. If you really want to show both sides to the abortion debate, then that scene was necessary because that was the reality. Hell, even still is. The two-parter goes to great lengths to give each position a voice and to reflect the reasoning people at the time used. To me, in order to capture the truth of the anti-abortion side, it's imperative to show how forceful the protesters could be and the kinds of graphic imagery they use to sway people away from abortion. Again, stuff they still do. That people do more than just say, abortion is wrong. There's more hurdles to jump over than heated conversations for anyone considering ending a pregnancy. We didn't get to see much of Tessa's decision-making process, but by the time she confirmed that she was indeed pregnant, she already knew that she wanted an abortion. She didn't want to be a parent or to see the pregnancy through. Though Tessa did try to involve Joey to let him know what was happening, he was too wrapped up in his double life with Caitlin. So Tessa was left without support as she made the decision that was best for her, especially since she couldn't count on Joey to be there for her. When Spike became pregnant again, she still wasn't sure what to do. Sure, this time it was with someone she loved and who loved her, and she was more prepared for having a child, but Spike still wasn't certain if she should see the pregnancy through. Initially, she wanted to talk it over with Snake, but after hearing him say that he wasn't ready for a kid other than Emma and that he already had a lot on his plate, Spike convinced herself that he wouldn't want her to be pregnant. That without asking, Spike thought she already knew how he felt and that he'd rather her get an abortion. You really get the sense that she wanted an abortion, not because she sincerely thought that's what was best for her. Instead, it seemed more like pre-wedding and new family building jitters. That she was trying to tiptoe to not make Snake call off the wedding, while also worrying that she was better off just continuing to raise Emma alone. And because she let these concerns dictate her decisions, she seemed to base her choice on what she thought Snake wanted rather than ask him or consider what she herself wanted. Still, she did intend to talk it over with Snake, and very clearly would've, even without Emma's interfering. She still wanted Snake involved in this choice, especially because she was about to commit herself to him the very next day. And when they finally got to talk it over, both Spike and Snake wanted to go through with the little happy accident that would become Jack. As Snake said, which one of them didn't want this baby? This was also a happy turnout for Emma, who personally was against abortion, which came into play when the next person on our list faced this choice. Probably the one everyone thinks of when it comes to abortion in Degrassi is, of course, Manny Santos. She was the first of the young TNG cast to deal with a pregnancy scare, and her story came near the height of early TNG's popularity. By the time of the episode Accidents Happen Part 1, Manny was trying to move on from her disastrous relationship with Craig, waiting for the school to stop calling her a boyfriend stealer for what she did to Ashley, while also working to mend her own broken heart. And so, of course, a pregnancy was exactly what she needed at that point. At first, she didn't consider that she was having early symptoms, but when Emma pointed out that throwing up and missing a period aren't only signs of stress, Manny realized she might be in more trouble than a ruined reputation. She wanted any reason to doubt that she might be pregnant, asking Paige how to know if a guy wore a condom, then asking Craig if he did, but every answer only confirmed that she likely had more than an upset stomach. Like many other characters who've been in her position, at first it seemed Manny was trying to avoid confirming and just pretend everything was okay. But eventually she realized she needed to face it and went to the one person she knew who would help, Spike. Someone who's been in her shoes, would know what to do, and wouldn't hate her if her suspicions were proven true. And Spike really shined in this two-parter, being honest enough to tell Manny that she needs to be more careful in the future while also being understanding and supportive, just like her own mom was. But unfortunately, it turned out Manny was definitely pregnant. She feared Craig would be mad at her, but when she told him, he was actually fine with it. Excited even because he saw a baby as building the family he lost when his dad died. But Manny wasn't as keen. In fact, when Craig proposed the idea of raising the child, Manny was conflicted and unsure, as though she was trying to convince herself to go through with Craig's plan instead of what she already thought she wanted. But in listening to Craig embrace the future of being parents, Manny decided to try it. In all the excited talk, it seemed like teen pregnancy and parenthood wouldn't be so bad until reality came crashing down. When Ashley announced to the cafeteria that she was pregnant, Manny realized that she wouldn't be able to just exist in school like nothing happened. Everything would change, and everyone would know why. And though Emma tried to help Manny and Craig learn about caring for a baby, the crash course only confirmed to Manny that she definitely didn't want to be a mom yet. Babies were a lot more work than Craig made them out to be, and she wasn't ready to handle it. He clearly wasn't ready either, so he couldn't be reliable when times got hard or say the baby needed a diaper change. Manny still hated the thought of being pregnant and all of the body changes that would come with it. Telling her parents was out of the question because when her cousin was in her position, the cousin was sent to a convent in the Philippines. Plus, she didn't want to be a parent yet. She wanted to finish high school, maybe study fashion, travel the world, do everything that a baby in pregnancy would prevent. Manny's talk with Spike about the reality of being a teen parent only confirmed this. The upsides did not outweigh the reasons not to see the pregnancy through. What it also did was confirm to Manny that she didn't have to be a teen mom or give birth if she didn't want to. Thankfully, when Manny told her mom, she understood and was supportive. Emma was a different story. As someone who was the product of a teen pregnancy, Emma could only see the situation from her own perspective. What if Spike had chosen to abort her? The fact that she wouldn't exist if Spike had made a different decision made the debate around abortion very personal, and Manny choosing to abort seemed like an attack on someone like Emma. She struggled to look past her own feelings and empathize with Manny's position, but Emma still knew that this was Manny's choice to make. And even though she thought that Manny was making the wrong one, Emma was still Manny's friend. Emma still had to defend her and her ability to make that decision, even if she disagreed. At the end of the day, it was Manny's body, not Emma's or even Craig's to make decisions over. Actually, when Emma would later have a pregnancy scare of her own, she said, "I never thought I'd abort," in her verbal diarrhea panic. So maybe she later changed her stance on it? Or maybe she wasn't phrasing the fact that she didn't want to get an abortion well? Or like others on this list, her mind changed now that she was the pregnant one? Or possibly somehow justifying getting an abortion only for her specific case? We really don't know. This two-parter was also changed when it aired in the US, and by that I mean it actually did not air. It was left out of the season 3 lineup and wouldn't be shown until 2 years later as a part of a Degrassi cast pick special as Cassie Steele's selection, and then again as a part of a Degrassi marathon leading up to the season 6 premiere. According to Wikipedia, the channel that aired Degrassi in the States, considered it too honest for its summer block that was supposed to be lighthearted. Here, the real intent of the move is very clear, especially considering how it handled honest episodes in the past. With ones like Shout or Jagged Little Pill, the network altered the airing order of the season to suit when they wanted to show such sensitive content, with Shout actually coming out during their 2003 summer block. Jagged Little Pill, originally the season 1 finale, was edited and later shown as part of season 2. Now, maybe I'm missing other cases, but as far as my brief research shows, Accidents Will Happen was the only episode in TNG that was pulled entirely. When Liberty got pregnant, it wasn't a question in her mind what she wanted. She didn't want an abortion. We don't get to hear her reasoning, but even though she didn't want to be pregnant, she still didn't want to get an abortion or take the abortion route. Instead, Liberty tried to just ignore that she was inching closer to giving birth, which led to a lot of drama, hardship, and heartache. And as a side note, I personally really wish we would have gotten to see more of Liberty's side in the whole pregnancy storyline for her. I feel like the story focused so much on JT's perspective at the cost of Liberty. I can't say I know why this decision was made, but I'm pretty sure how they handled Liberty is probably a big part of why not many people really like her. For Jenna, she thought that abortion wasn't right for her at first. Even though she agreed with Casey that they couldn't be parents and their current ambitions didn't make space for a child, not to mention she didn't want to be pregnant to begin with, abortion just wasn't a consideration for Jenna. But then after getting the ultrasound, suddenly everything became real. Like many others before her, she learned that she couldn't just ignore the situation and then it'd go away somehow. When the reality of her situation hit, then abortion seemed like something Jenna might consider. But because Jenna waited so long to address her symptoms, abortion wasn't really an option anymore. She was so far along that an abortion at that point would have a big risk of complications or other health issues, and the doctor noted that at this stage, abortions are usually only done when there's a medical need for it. So, Jenna would have to see the pregnancy to term. Alli had a scare of her own, and it of course came at the worst time. Just when MIT was offering to admit her next year, her parents were finally proud of her again, and her relationship with Dave was going well, she realized she accidentally missed her birth control pills for a few days. And then what seemed like early pregnancy symptoms began. Initially, she assumed that if she were pregnant, then she would give birth and raise the baby with Dave because that's what he wanted. But as Claire pointed out, Alli wasn't thinking about what she wanted. What would be best for her and her future? That it didn't have to be, if not pregnant, then MIT, and if pregnant, then Team Mom. When she did consider her own wants and wishes, she realized that she didn't want to have a child yet. She felt that she was too young, and she knew she wanted to go to MIT. It wasn't just to make her parents happy. It was where she wanted her life to go, and she couldn't base her decision over her body on what Dave wanted. And luckily, it turned out that she wasn't pregnant after all. And as for Claire, she thought she knew right away what to do. As she said, Claire Edwards always has a plan. She wasn't going to be a mom. She wasn't going to be pregnant and give birth. And she wasn't going to give up on going to Columbia next year. Claire had 1,000,001 dreams to pursue, and they finally seemed possible now that she was cancer-free. But like with others on this list, reality hit her. Not just that she was lucky to have gotten pregnant after cancer, but that there was something real growing inside of her, something that she wanted. Suddenly she felt her plans for the future could be renegotiated. Claire knew that putting her ambitions on hold to be a mom wasn't the best for her future, but that didn't stop her from wanting it. She found an abortion wasn't right for her, and neither was adoption. Not only was she very lucky to get pregnant at all, but when she thought about it, she knew she wanted to see the pregnancy through. And even when shown the reality of being a parent, Claire still knew what her decision was. The most recent person at the time of writing to consider abortion was Lola. It turned out that she had been taking her birth control pills in the wrong order, so she and Miles were more risky than they thought. Once she confirmed that she was pregnant, she immediately knew how she wanted to handle it. Abortion was the only option that felt right to her. As she told Yael, she didn't just decide on a whim. Lola spent a lot of time thinking and researching before making that decision. She wasn't ready to be a mom, and she didn't even want to be pregnant. And she didn't doubt what she wanted. Lola knew what was best for Lola. Eventually she wanted kids, just not while in high school. The tough part came when she wondered what her certainty said about her. It wasn't difficult for her to decide what she wanted to do, so did that make her a bad person? Lola knew other people agonize over considering abortion, so what does it mean that she wasn't one of them? That she wasn't even sad about the choice she made? But as Yael pointed out, Lola did what was right for her, and she wasn't the first or last person to feel like her. Not being distraught over getting an abortion just meant Lola knew what was right for her. I'm glad all these characters were able to explore their options and figure out what was best for them. I'm glad Degrassi takes place in a country and time where these characters had the freedom of bodily autonomy. Unfortunately, at the time of writing this, the Supreme Court seems close to taking that freedom away from us in the States. Mere inches from putting my ability to make decisions over my body in the hands of whatever state I live in. Reality is that shortly after this comes out, governments may be able to tell people like the ones on this list what they can and can't do with their bodies. Hell, some states have already made certain contraceptives illegal. And as many have pointed out, this isn't just about abortion rights. Roe v. Wade was decided based on the idea that individuals have the power to make decisions over their private affairs without governments getting involved, whether that be state or federal. So many important freedoms have been defended based on this, like gay marriage or interracial marriage. And this isn't scaremongering speculation. When you look at the majority opinions on these cases, that is the reasoning the judges used. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, all of that is at risk, regardless of what we, as the people who will have to live with these decisions, want. It's not ending big government control to let states ban abortions. It's permitting governments to remove our ability to make decisions as private citizens. I'm not being alarmist. You don't have to look far for people who are just itching to end gay marriage. And one of my own state senators has come out and said that the issue of racial marriage should have been left up to the states to decide. In other words, that state governments should have had the ability to make interracial couples illegal. And he didn't say this decades ago. This happened in March of this year, 2022. Abortion will always be an option to people like the senator. People with power, money, and the ability to just take off to another state for a couple days. But not for folks like me, and especially not for people who are less lucky or privileged than I am. People for whom systematically supported racism and poverty have robbed them of the resources to just move or take a few days off. People who will bear children without the resources or preparedness to take care of them. This isn't just an abortion or even feminism problem. This is also a race and class issue too. I pray the court upholds this ruling that is vital to human rights in this country. But I can't be hopeful.